Picture this. You're a lover of animation, or a lover of history and culture, or maybe a little bit of both, and suddenly you hear talks of a new animated series of a long-forgotten historical figure. A man of African descent, far away from his homeland, thrusted into the world of daimyos and shoguns, and you, for the first time, can bear witness to his journey as he rises above his station against all odds to be one of the greatest lost samurai in the era of feudal Japan. But when the time comes, and the show begins, this happens.
Oh my god, what is that? Oh my god! What is that?
There's a lot I want to say about this show, and I'm honestly struggling with how to start this. But if you've never watched Yasuke, good for you. But as much as I don't recommend it, you should watch it to make your own opinions, and I'll be spoiling pretty much the whole thing. The good thing is it's only 6 episodes long, but the bad thing is it feels like 3 hours of straight filler. Also, just FYI, I do know who Thomas Lockley is. And I am aware of the controversy that's going on with the history of Yasuke. And I also know some of the issues that Assassin's Creed Shadow has with Yasuke, among other things. But I am focusing on the 2021 anime, and at the time, none of this was going on, one. And I was under the impression that some vast knowledge was uncovered about some forgotten person in history, so please keep that in mind. Maybe I'll touch on Assassin's Creed at the end, because it's funny, but I haven't made up my mind yet. But with that out of the way, what is Yasuke the anime about? The show takes place in feudal Japan, but one where giant robots and wizards exist. And while in episode 1 we first see Yasuke decked out in samurai gear ready to protect his lord and put his life on the line in the middle of a war, the actual Yasuke we follow is a middle-aged and battle-worn drunk who works as a boatsman in an unimportant village because Samurai Yasuke was a dream about his past and he drinks to numb the pain. Not only that, we are introduced to a second protagonist in the form of a sickly girl named Saki, whose illness is from her uncontrollable magic powers she seems to be unaware about. Yasuke is approached by Saki's mother to help escort the two of them via the river to see a special doctor that can help cure, train Saki, to which Yasuke refuses until he doesn't. But then they are ambushed and attacked by a Russian bear woman, an African shaman, a sight user, and an annoying f***ing robot.
He's black.
We can see that.
I thought you were the only black man in Japan.
Apparently not.
Are you two related?
Shut up, scrap metal.
The bulk of the story is an escort mission between Yasuke and Saki while having to avoid/fight thugs along the way. In episode 2, we meet an evil priest who hired the goons that attack Yasuke and the others because he wants Saki's power to control the Catholic Church. He, along with the hired help, end up capturing and torturing Yasuke to find Saki by episode 3. Throughout his torture, we see more flashbacks of the time he was a samurai to learn more about him, and eventually Saki comes to save him with her powers that she now has pretty decent control of. It is in my opinion that this is where the show should have ended. Why? Well, the main reason Saki's mom wanted to take her daughter to a special doctor was so she can control her powers so they wouldn't harm her anymore and make her sick. By episode 3, which is, no exaggeration, about 36 hours after the ambush in the river in episode 1, Saki is not only not sick, but she is able to control her powers enough that she can fight with them. On top of that, the expanse of Yasuke's flashback B-side story has been completely exhausted at this point. So all the new story beats we get going forward is about Saki and magic and mechs. Why are there mechs? In episode 4, since the priest is dead, we see new villains show up. The evil daimyo, who's the Wicked Witch of the West, and her subordinate captain who drank the Wicked Witch Kool-Aid. Yasuke and Saki officially finally go on their journey to find the doctor, and one day passes and Yasuke fights the captain and her lackeys with Saki's help. They eventually meet the doctor who was friends with Yasuke in the past and is training other magical children, and we get a tell don't show lore dump of the aftermath of what happened to Yasuke after the very first flashback back in episode 1. And then the doctor tests Saki's powers, which she passes with flying colors to an absurd degree. Mind you that from their journey on the river till now, less than a week, maybe 5 days has gone by, half of which they've been in the village, but somehow with no training, Saki can disintegrate a wooden sword and put it back together with ease, even though she's been sick since she was a baby. I'm not gonna lie to you, this is when I checked out. I'd been jotting down notes per episode up to this point just to keep track of everything, but I simply could not keep going. I have watched the show in its entirety the first time it came out, and I vaguely remember how it ends, something something power of friendship, something something Saki is Jesus, but legitimately I could not keep watching. In my head, I'm just keep thinking, I don't care about any of this. I just wanted to watch a historical story about a black samurai who really existed in Japan, and I know about Thomas Lockley, but this was before this all came out. But instead, I'm watching a speedrun of a samurai who doesn't want to be a samurai, and I'm supposed to care about this random girl, and there's magic, and there's mechs. Why are there mechs? Why are there mechs?
Why you do that?
Calm down. Get up.
I don't want to hug.
I really wanted to like Yasuke. Like, I really did. It's the only reason why I'm being so critical of it right now. I remember seeing the banner on Netflix and thinking, oh cool, another Afro samurai. And then I watch it and I'm so confused because Yasuke was a real person and they just did that. But fortunately, LeSean Thomas, the creator of the show, took on an interview and it did shed some light on insight on his thought process.
This is just full disclosure, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but I don't make anime for hardcore anime fans. And
that's the opening sentence of the interview too. He also talks about mechs and more mechs. Did I mention mechs? What, you think I don't like mechs? What gave you that idea? All that aside though, I strongly suggest that you actually watch the interview for yourself. I'll put the link in the description because I think it's actually pretty decent, and I also found myself agreeing with him in certain parts, like how people don't want to be preached to in entertainment, or how most anime fans stick with what they like, just with a different skin. And I think that's true outside of anime as well. People like to watch or play the same genre over and over again, but just with a new cast every time. But then there are other things that he said that just don't match the energy of the show, or just not executed well. For one, the whole I don't make anime for anime fans is insane compared to what we see in the show. And he also mentions how he likes short original stories instead of 100+ episode odysseys like Naruto or Dragon Ball or Bleach. And I completely understand that because as popular as they are, these are soap opera level shows, and the length of them might also be what turns people away who might want to get into anime, but it's just pretty daunting. I mean, if I wasn't watching One Piece since I was a kid, I don't think I'd ever get into it after having to watch over 1,000 episodes just to get to where everyone is now. And I think that's what he was trying to get at with the whole not making anime for anime fans. The problem I have with this in comparison to the show is, when you have such a short story, that story not only needs to be complete, but also has to have a good flow that leads to its completion. Yasuke is completed in 6 episodes, but it feels like every aspect is rushed to its completion. The journey, Yasuke's quest for atonement, Saki's miraculous mastery of her powers, the world building, meaning it's non-existent, the robots are the worst thing about the show. And I know it's not just my bias saying that, because I don't like robot anime. Sorry, Mobile Suit and Neo Genesis fans, but even Studio Trigger could not make me watch that. But the inclusion of them is just awkward. The story is set in an era of feudal Japan with sci-fi elements, but the only sci-fi elements are the military robots. In normal society, no one uses any sort of technology like that. People still have to get water from the river, and fires are made manually. In fairness, you can glean that mechanical weaponry is only utilized and available for war, so the common people wouldn't know what to do with it. But there's robot parts scattered around villages and forests, and you're telling me no mediocre artisan tried scraping them for parts? No merchant trying to sell them for a quick buck? No one tries to use the scrap weapons against the corrupt soldiers that kill indiscriminately? Okay, the priests and the hired mercs expand the world like a little bit more, but I don't care what happens outside of Japan. Why didn't you just focus on the actual history of Yasuke? And yes, I know, white man's fanfiction, but the flashbacks of Yasuke were more interesting than the present timeline. Why do that? Well, he kind of answers that also in the interview.
Naturally, Hollywood has conditioned us to not accept the fantastical before truth. We always have to get a biopic before we get adventure.
Yeah.
You got to have, I've mentioned this before, but you got to have Lincoln by Daniel Day-Lewis before you have Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. You can't drop Vampire Hunter Abraham Lincoln first before, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's very true.
You can, but Hollywood has conditioned us, and American history has conditioned us. We have to find truth before we find the fantastical in it.
I don't know if he doesn't see the problem with that or something, but if we didn't have the Lincoln biopic and we only had Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, we would still have the documentations of Abraham Lincoln's life. I knew, and I'm pretty sure every American knew, of Abraham Lincoln before the movies, so neither of them would have provided us with truths that we didn't already know. What information can people find on Yasuke? Lockley's book? The children's book that's only summarized in English? LeSean even questions if Japanese people know about Yasuke in the same interview. And here's the gag. Even if he did follow Lockley's book and it came out that it was all fake, Yasuke's story without mechs or magic is already fantastical. I mean, he's a black man in feudal Japan. That rhyme. The whimsy writes itself. It's extremely simple and maybe even cliche, but it works. He's a slave from a faraway land, demonstrates his bravery in front of a noble, is turned into a warrior, finds camaraderie and even romance with another who is not taken seriously by how they look, only to find that that person is a spy and must choose between her and his loyalty to the one who saved him. I don't even completely disagree with LeSean's stance on history before fantasy. I don't even think I have an opinion at all. Just, this show would have been better as a movie that ended in episode 3. Believe it or not, there were some things I did like about the show. The Russian bear woman, even though the only time she had a Russian accent was when she said the word vodka. I'm not joking. I also like the shaman guy, and the animation was pretty decent. It's not Dandadan or JJK or Legends of Dragon Ball Tale, but it's pretty good, and the fights were okay. And I really like the soundtrack, especially the intro song. And this scene right here? That's pretty cool. But none of that makes up for how many cons this show had. The Yasuke anime is like bad fusion food. Nothing went together. Or the dishes are there, but it's not fused. Instead of getting an al pastor bibimbap burrito, you get a Baja fish taco with some kimchi on the side. And it's frozen. If they made the setting a sci-fi feudal Japan world where some form of technology is widely used, I would have gave this show way more grace. And to think the creator wanted this to be a gateway to anime for casuals and non-anime watchers? I can name a few anime to watch that were way better than this, and they're short. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Yasuke falls under a few categories: a story about atonement, a historical fantasy, a sci-fi fantasy, and an escort mission, among other things. And here are 4 shows that share some or most aspects with Yasuke. To me, the closest one being Moribito, Guardian of the Spirit. Where Yasuke was an African man in medieval Japan who seeks atonement for his past wrongs, Moribito's main character, Balsa, is a wandering female warrior in a fictional Asian-centric world seeking atonement for her past wrongs. Both characters are outcast, both worlds are filled with magic, and both are tasked to escort a magical child from point A to point B. But where Yasuke's child wields magic, Balsa's child is pregnant with magic. Maybe this wasn't the good show to start with. Moribito mainly focuses on atonement and motherhood, among other themes. And while there's not much fighting in the series, when it does happen, it's pretty satisfying to watch. But if you're really into action, the second closest show I can think of is Afro Samurai. There is no escort, and Afro is definitely on a path of vengeance and not redemption, but the story takes place in a sci-fi feudal Japan, and you follow a samurai from start to finish. He's also black, and it's 1 episode shorter than Yasuke. The last 2, Samurai Champloo and Michiko and Hatchin, are probably the least similar, but they are among my favorites of this whole list. Both shows are escort missions, but the adventure is the most important part since they follow an episodic structure. Samurai Champloo, like Yasuke, is anachronistic with hip-hop elements sprinkled into the world of samurai, and it absolutely makes no sense, but it doesn't matter because the vibes are right. Also, none of these characters are real people, so that helps. Michiko and Hachin doesn't even take place in Japan. The setting is a fictional country just like Moribito, but in South America. It also shares the theme of motherhood and a big want for freedom. The protagonist is also female. And black. And there's a bunch of other shows that share themes with Yasuke, but I'm not going to go through all of them because that'll take forever. But I just wanted to share some of the actually good shows with anyone who is as disappointed as I was with Yasuke. It's also for the casual or non-anime watchers that for some reason might be watching this. Even the honorable mentions are great. They're not at all like Yasuke, but they're definitely worth watching, especially Blue Eye Samurai. I made a separate video about that months ago. Again, I really wanted to like Yasuke, and it's because of that reason is why I'm so critical towards it. I did list the things that I liked, so I'm not just blindly hating, but I wish it were better. It needed to be either a 90-minute movie or like have 4 more episodes. And no mechs. You can keep the magic, just no mechs. And even though Yasuke's official history is apparently like 2 paragraphs long, I'm not at all against the idea of using him in more works of fiction. Assassin's Creed probably notwithstanding. But anyway, thank you for watching this video. Don't know how long this is, because it took me a while to record this, but I appreciate you watching to the end. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye. Now that the bulk of the video is recorded, I guess I can just yap about the Assassin's Creed Shadows. I wasn't gonna play it anyway, so I don't really care too much about it. I mean, I haven't played Assassin's Creed since Assassin's Creed 3. I've played 1, I've played 2, A through C, and I've played 3. 3 is my favorite, I think. But it was like around Assassin's Creed 4 when they lost me, because why would you be a pirate and an assassin? That doesn't go together. But then they made Assassin's Creed games with Vikings and Spartans. If you hear the ambulance in the background, I don't care. I'm not editing this. But now they have a samurai. Why wouldn't it be a ninja as not a samurai? Why wouldn't it be a ninja as an assassin? I feel like Ubisoft wanted to make other games, but because Assassin's Creed was such like a money printer, they just slapped Assassin's Creed on all the other stuff. And now that I think about it, why are you playing as a historical figure? If you never played any of the Assassin's Creed games, and if you have played like more of them than I have, please tell me if this is something new. But in the games I played, you didn't play as a historical figure. None of the characters were real. But all of them were native to the world that you were playing in. Like in Assassin's Creed 3, you played as a Native American in America, and in 1 you played as, I think Altair was Arabic, but you played in the Holy Land in Jerusalem. And in 2, A through C, you play as Ezio, who is Italian. But now now you're in Japan and you're playing as a non-Japanese man. I don't understand why would it be a historical... That's what gets me more than anything. Why would it be a historical... I'm lying. That's not what gets me with anything. The idea that you're a giant black dude in feudal Japan and you're supposed to be sneaky. Can you imagine? I'm just thinking about how you're supposed to sneak around and evade capturers. I don't know what they're thinking, man. The thing is, historical characters are in the games, like Leonardo DiCaprio. The historical figures like Leonardo da Vinci are in the game in Assassin's Creed one of the Ezio Assassin's Creed games, and he actually makes gadgets for you. That was pretty cool. But I'm thinking it would have been better if Yasuke was a side character who, since we don't know much about him, he can pretty much be whatever we want him to be. He wants to be a samurai, but he can't be because of, obvious reasons. But the main character, who is actually a ninja, I have no idea why they wouldn't make them ninjas. But the main character, who are ninjas, they teach Yasuke to be a ninja because he's an outcast, but they still care about him. And we get some sort of camaraderie with Yasuke and the main character. And basically, Ubisoft builds him up to the point where he can get his own Assassin's Creed game. And that's when he finds his way back to his homeland, and he uses the skills that he learned from his Japanese friends to help liberate his people from the enslavers. That's a way better story to me, in my opinion. Because why would you use a historical figure and the person you're using, no one knows much about him? At that point, why wouldn't you make a fictional character? But then the question is, why would you make a fictional character who's not native to the land and break the pattern that you've established for how many years now? But the funniest thing was when I saw that clip of Yasuke fighting, these other Japanese enemies, and they put hip hop music in the background for his theme music. Bro, if that's not all blacks are alike, I don't know what is. And I'm sure they're not saying blacks. Like, hip hop music is American music. Why wouldn't you I don't know where Yasuke is from. I've heard that he's West African. I've heard that he's East African. But say he's East African, why wouldn't you why wouldn't you research East African music? East African instruments, East African songs, traditional East African beats, and you mix that with traditional Japanese instruments, Japanese beats. That would make way more sense. Like, hip hop music, he's not American, he's African. I don't know, man. It's just funny. I'm not gonna touch the game. But yeah, that's my 2 cents about it. Bye.